Going live. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here, just sitting around drinking some tea on a Sunday. Thought I would hang out with you. Hey, I'm streaming live from my desktop today, which always seems to give me some issues with the connection. So I think the audio is often better than the video. But if you're with me today, hey, I wanted to talk to you about 5 movies. I'm going to call them guilty pleasure movies. And these aren't like just bad movies. They are movies that are pretty controversial. And in fact, some of these movies, we'll start light. And by the end, I think we'll be to the controversial movies. And they are so controversial that I'm not sure that the creators, hey, Mason, welcome to the chat today. They are so controversial that I'm not sure the creators of the movie will admit that they made the movie or promote it or put it on their CVs or anything like that. So I think some of these movies are either that bad or that offensive, or problematic in this day and age, those types of things. And there are probably a ton of movies like that, but I'm talking about fairly recent movies, not going way, way back. I'm not going to address the I can't remember the guy in Breakfast at Tiffany's that played like a Chinese man. I can't remember his name. What's happening, Off-Roader 56 Crown Vic? I do like the Crown Vics. I always wanted a Mercury Marauder. All right, so I'm going to talk about my movies. I am curious to know what movies you like that might be guilty pleasure movies that you might not even tell people, even your close friends, that you like those movies, because there are a bunch out there. Hair's looking a little nappy. Might get out the air cut again and trim it up a little bit here. So you let me know your movies. I'm gonna watch the comments too, because of the chat here. Because if I see something, I'm like, oh man, I wish I made my list. I'll tell you what, as I was doing a little research on this, I kind of just sketched out some names of movies that I thought were my guilty pleasure, the controversial ones, the ones that we never speak aloud. The names we shall not mention. And I just put a raw list, and then I was crossing off some of them because I think some of them are mainstream enough. They get replayed a lot. They're on TV a lot. What's up, FH? Ben Thomas? What's happening? What's happening, Panda Nation? Glad you're all here. And then I crossed some of those off. Like Ace Ventura. I love that movie, but that's a mainstream movie. And I can watch that movie all the time. So it's not like something I wanted to throw on there and be like, oh, that's interesting. I wanted to pull out some names of movies that maybe you've never even heard of for these reasons. So let's hit them up here, man. Let's hit them up. So the first movie, and I don't think this was a widely popular movie or wildly popular, but it did result in a couple spin-offs, which I did see, which I only vaguely remember. Now, the reason I like this movie, and I didn't research this, so I didn't go into the details much, but I'm also curious if you guys have ever seen this. So this was an original Paul Walker movie. It was called The Skulls. Joshua Jackson co-starred. They were guys that went to, it's called Yale. I can't remember which Ivy League school. And they were recruited into a secret society. And this secret society is a kind of a representation of a real secret society. I think they call it the Skull and Crossbones Society, if anyone knows that for sure, but they just called it the Skulls. And, there have been notable people from presidents like the Bushes were in it, and military leaders and business leaders that were all members of this. It was a predominantly male or exclusively male organization, but in the last decade, I think they have started to let in females, and they've also started to kind of tone down in the world of, the internet, a little bit of like their rituals and things like that. But, there are secret societies out there. I would even call the Masons like one of them. But this movie kind of dove into that. And what I really liked about it was just the representation of immense wealth, right? The idea that there is a small group of people, from judges to police officers, politicians, businessmen, whatever, that abide by this code of helping each other out, and the money just flows, baby. The money just flows between them. So that's kind of crazy. So anyway, when The Skulls is on, I usually will pop it on. There were some really cute other supporting stars in it and stuff like that, but it was kind of interesting. And it wasn't like a particularly great movie, but like I said, I think there was a Skulls 2 and a Skulls 3, if I recall. So it did generate enough money. So that was the least controversial of them. Let's hit number 2. Let's hit number 2 here. Now, I love Chris Farley, man. I loved all his movies, even Black Sheep, which was considered not so good of a Chris Farley, David Spade movie. I did love it. There was a movie. Has anyone heard of this? It was called Almost Heroes, and it was about the character Matthew Perry played and Chris Farley. And Chris Farley was the outdoorsman, and Matthew Perry was the military guy, and they were hired to go out and trek across America to discover the Pacific. Basically, I guess they didn't know if it was the Pacific quicker than Lewis and Clark, who had a head start on them. So it was like these guys who were almost heroes, but because they didn't quite get there as fast as Lewis and Clark. And it's a slapstick comedy. There's nothing historically accurate about it. It has a bunch of indigenous people and foreigners and a lot of poop jokes and things like that. And I love it. I loved it. There are so many predictable jokes in there. There are so many like typical Chris Farley, like predictable antics in it that I just fall for every time. I just loved it. I just loved it. If you have not seen Almost Heroes and you are looking to watch a movie where you can literally check your brain out, this is the movie for you. And it was not a commercial success, and it probably isn't like the laugh after laugh like Tommy Boy, which I loved, those types of things. But when that's on, I can just turn it on at any point anywhere, because you really don't need to see the setup. It's even not the best part of it. But the part where they're just traveling across country, I can just turn it on and watch it from whenever. All right, number 3. There's 5 of these bad boys. Number 3. This one I don't think is controversial, but the reason I put this on there is one of the pieces of research, the very detailed intellectual pieces of research that I did for this little project, is I went to the 50 worst movies of all time list on IMDb, and I just scrolled down it, and I would say that most of them seem like they're pretty bad. Most of them I haven't seen because they were reliably pretty bad. But one of them that was on there, I was like, what? You're calling that one of the worst movies of all time? I've seen it probably like a dozen times. I loved it. I loved it in the series of movies. And the fact that you're calling it one of the worst of all time, I guess I'm going to have to address it because I loved it. And it was the movie Predators, starring, who's that guy? Adam something. I can't think. Brody. Adam Brody? Adam Brody. There were some other guys, Topher Grace and Danny Trejo, I think, was in it, and a bunch of other guys, right? It actually was a fairly star-studded cast, and it's a movie about a bunch of elite paramilitary or military humans being airdropped on a planet. This video is going to be full spoilers, FYI, full spoilers. Dropped on a planet, and they're hunted by the Predators, and the Predators from the original movies with Schwarzenegger and all that. And I loved it, man. Yeah, it didn't have like Schwarzenegger in it. It was kind of a different take. It really kind of went more into the detail of why Predators hunt and how they do that, and kind of their game reserves and all of that. And it was like all these alpha males, super lethal people for all sorts of reasons. There's a doctor, a convict, a Yakuza, probably offended a lot of people. And I just thought it's a kind of a riveting movie from start to finish. You're being hunted, dude. What is more suspenseful than that? Right? And there's some interesting twists and resolution and all that, or pseudo resolution, right? So I just thought it was kind of a cool concept, because it's always cool to see like the baddest of the bad out there dealing and going toe to toe with the baddest of the bad from another planet, right? All right. So that's number 3. So that one got on there because it's in the top 50 worst movies of all time. I actually thought it was shot well too. It was like kind of this outlier in the Predator series and the Predator saga, but it was like pretty well done. I mean, there are other Predator movies that look like they're fan-made films, but they're legit. Anyway. All right, this one, now we start getting into some movies that I think people are avoiding because they are problematic, because they're making fun of people. The last one is very controversial. I struggled with whether I should even admit it, because most people don't even know this movie exists, and I enjoy watching it. And not because I'm some sort of bigot or anything like that. It's just interesting, and I think they did a good job of catering to the right people. Anyway, we'll get there. So number 5 is it's going to be an interesting one. I might have to just cut the video feed and act like we got a lot of static connection bad. But number 4 isn't as controversial, and that movie was Kingpin. Woody Harrelson plays a disgraced professional bowler, and Randy Quaid plays an Amish kid who is really good at bowling, and they are deciding to go on a tour to go on a comeback tour and win the national bowling championships. I'm not sure if that's a real thing. And I love it. Vanessa Angel's in it. That's when she was looking really hot. I don't know what happened to her. I know she was in like Weird Science or something like that, but then she just totally dropped off the radar. But I loved it because it was offensive and disgusting. And is it Fairley Brothers? I don't remember who made it, but it's in that same vein of like Something About Mary and those types of movies. And there's just a lot of crass humor in it, and then kind of some over the top shock value stuff as well. And the reason I put that on there is it was on the other day, and it was like on at 3 a.m. I was like, dude, I gotta watch this. I haven't seen this in so long. There's some awesome scenes in there. I just love that movie. All right, now the last one here, number 5. And 5 is we're losing the feed. 5 is gonna be 5 is an interesting one. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. Like I said, I was reluctant to put this up there, but it is a movie. I didn't make it. And it stars Johnny Knoxville, and it's called The Ringer. Now, this movie is problematic for all sorts of reasons, and I'm going to give you a spoiler alert because you'll probably never see it, and most people that see it just said that it was grossly offensive. And it's about a guy who decides to manufacture a handicap so that he can compete in the Special Olympics because he has gambling debts I think he needs to pay off. And the premise alone should warn you off about this movie, right? And like I said, I'm not sure how it got made in the progressive Hollywood world where you are taking a concept and trying to get funding and getting real stars. Katherine Heigl is in it. There's actually a handful of people that you would recognize from a bunch of other movies in it. And it is everything that you think it is, but it's funny, and oh my gosh, now I can't think of the guy. Brian, oh gosh, I can't think of his name. He's a famous actor, and he's in it as well. And he's actually a kind of a straight man actor. I didn't actually know he did comedy. Why? I should find out. I should get his name for you. He was also in Succession, and oh my gosh, should be a little faster. I need a an assistant here. Brian Cox. He's a British actor. You've seen him in everything. He's super popular and famous, and he was in it. And so we had a bunch of famous people in it. It's kind of maybe actually where I got introduced to Katherine Heigl. She looked pretty awesome in it, but totally problematic movie. I'm loath to comment too much on it, but what they actually did was they went to the Special Olympics. I think they actually went to special needs community. There are a lot of people in it from that community. I agree that I feel like this movie is one that they want to sweep away, bury, never admit that they made it, and yet I thought they did a decent job of kind of creating it, given all of the very inherent difficulties. I actually remember after this movie, I saw behind the scenes, and maybe it was on the DVD. You remember when we had DVDs and things like that, and they had some interviews with the actors, some of the, I call them extras, but they were supporting actors, from the special needs community and stuff like that. And they were kind of talking about their feedback. They didn't want certain terms and things like that, which I totally understand. And it seemed like that they were all accommodated, right? I mean, so they didn't want to go to that extreme, but or offend obviously the people that were in it. So I was glad to hear that. But it's one of those movies where I think, I don't know, you almost feel ashamed that you find it funny, but like I said, it was funny. That's why I want to put it up there, because it's called Guilty Pleasures. Hello from Chile, Christian Castro Burgos. ¿Cómo estás? I've actually been to Santiago, Chile. Went up to the Andes Mountains, did a little hiking in some of those mountains. It was very cold, very dry. It was very nice. Spent a little time in Santiago and did some shopping there. Christian, I don't know if you've ever heard of a rock called lapis lazuli. It's a blue stone, I believe, and that was actually fairly popular. I got introduced to it while I was in Chile, and I actually did a review on a Shinola watch, which I think uses that stone for the watch face. So they call it the lapis watch or something like that. I think I did a review on that. I think so. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that was something I distinctly recall from my time in Chile. Lapis lazuli. Anyway, so those are my 5 guilty pleasure movies. I don't know if anyone else has them. And I haven't seen most of these recently because the only time I would actually go out and watch them is if I'm scrolling through TV, web surfing, and they're on. And this is where if I saw these names on the TV, I would stop and just watch for a few minutes. And that's why I'm calling them like my guilty pleasure, totally offensive ones that I'll never admit to movies because I would probably never buy them on DVD or anything like that. So those are my thoughts. Anyone else has guilty pleasure movies? I want to know about it. I am going to do another. I was creating a list of some of my favorite movies, which or my not my favorite movies, but my most underrated movies. Star Wars prequels. Yes. So Ben, I'm curious. So you bring that up, and I was actually thinking of doing a video about Star Wars from my initial experience with Star Wars, where I was just a kid and absolutely mind blown by it, up to now, where I actually have not even seen The Last Skywalker. And I know all the spoilers and everything like that because they've all been out there, but I haven't even seen it and haven't been rushing out to it. So I'm kind of curious about what your thoughts on the prequels are. Motley says, Ted, what is love? Is that the name of the movie? Ted, what is love? Or Ted the movie, the bear movie, and what is love? Yes, Ted, I did like. Yuna, what's happening, buddy? Good day, good day. And what is love? That one I have not heard of. There was another one, Love Stinks. And that was on my preliminary list too with Bridget Wilson, and that was kind of a funny one. It's just about a relationship gone bad, and one guy doesn't want to is having trouble calling it off, right? Having trouble calling it off. It's just kind of funny. What is love? I've got to find that. See if I can figure out what it is. So I would love to. Oh, well, there's two What is Love's 2012 and a 2018 movie. So I'm curious which one you were talking about. The 2012 does not have a lot of information, so I'm guessing it's 2018. Motley, sorry, it's not What is Love. That's the song. Night at the Roxbury. You know what? There's a 2018 movie called What is Love, and it looks like it's a Japanese foreign film. So now you just may have made a cultural phenomenon. Yeah, Night at the Roxbury. I've seen that a few times. You know what's funny is someone just did like a meme about that. I can't remember. There are a couple NBA players that were dressed up and they look like Night at the Roxbury. I love that one. It was The Saint with Val Kilmer. You know what? That's a great. That is a great point. You know what? I actually liked that movie too, The Saint, and that was an interesting movie for me as a car guy as well because in that movie was basically the launch of, I believe they called it the Volvo C70, the coupe at that time. And I believe that was the launch for it because in the original Saint TV show, which I never saw, which was Roger Moore, I believe that they used a Volvo like P1200 or something like that, I think. And so I think it was a little bit of an homage to use a Volvo again in the reboot, which they did. I believe Elizabeth Shue was also in that movie. Yes, the Volvo, yeah, was cool. And I remember actually really liking it just because it wasn't like overly sporty, and yet it was kind of sporty. And Volvo was kind of right around that era where they were getting away from that crap box, Econo box looking squared off look to this more rounded kind of more modern competitive look. And it was a great looking car. And I remember actually some people, a lady at my old work had one of them, and I remember going out to look at it, and I loved it. It had like these little rubberized textures on the window switches and everything. There was just a lot of like small detail around it. It smelled good. The leather had like a really big hide texture to it. It was really great, and I actually love the movie in that. I love the car in that movie, and I actually love the movie because I was not really that familiar with the TV show and that he was a man of disguise and kind of righting wrong and all of this jazz. And so I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, even all the way up to the end where, I think, spoiler alert, I think you think he's dying and he's not. And, and anyway, it was pretty clever. It's so much so that Netflix, I believe Netflix has a movie called The Saint. And I think it's the same premise. And I started watching it, and I got about 5 or 10 minutes into it, and I couldn't watch it anymore. And I probably didn't give it a good enough shot, but I was expecting it to be more of an action thriller, psychological thing. And it was just kind of campy and wasn't well produced. And so I just tuned out of it. Now, that being said, if anyone has watched this new The Saint movie on Netflix and thought it was pretty good, please let me know. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that the Volvo, a friend of mine, Corey, mentioned back in the day when we were kids. Volvo. He always said like it's like Volvo designed a car and then forgot to put like a front lower spoiler on, and they just have like this little angled black piece that goes on the front, and it was like weird because it totally looked like an afterthought. But it was there was the generation after that where they really kind of got it all together and were really making a competitive car. And ever since then, they've been hitting it. They've been crushing it. And the new Polestars, man, I would love to drive one of those. Even when I was thinking of getting a new car, I was really looking at, is it the Volvo S90 or whatever the new sedan is? And then they came out with like the S60, which looked like it, but was a little smaller. That's what I really wanted, but they were too new for me to buy new, or too expensive for me to buy new, and too new for me to find a good deal on a used car. So the new Volvo sedans I think are really great, and obviously the Polestar Coupe is crazy, but that car was way more expensive than I ever expected it to be after they released it. So anyway, those are my movies, man. The Saint, yeah, you know what? If people didn't like The Saint, I should have put that on there. I just thought it was a fairly respected movie, although it kind of disappeared, and they could have totally made a sequel on it. And Val Kilmer's career really started disappearing after that, which is too bad. It's too bad about these movies. I know the James Bond movie and the Top Gun movie, all of which I was excited about seeing this year, have all been pushed back. I'm not going to make predictions here, but it certainly seems like the worst of the coronavirus is, I don't know where the peak is, but it seems like the worst case scenarios are kind of behind us now. It looks like we have made a bunch of progress on that. So I am very hopeful we will be returning to normal here pretty soon. It seems like all objective looks at it seem to suggest that there are reasons to restart the economy. So I'm hopeful for that, so that people can get back to work, and for people like me, even start to look for work. Although I've put that on pause, just given the number of people out there that are kind of looking for that as well. So hope everyone else is doing well. I am wearing the new shirt here, the new Von Panda shirt, and this is what we call the vintage tee. It's printed on, as you can see, kind of the middle piece here, and then it is sewn with the sleeves afterwards, so it gives it this wraparound. And I'm using that kind of I won't say Von someone logo, but it's a version of that says Von Panda. I'll tell you what, though, I am really impressed by this material. It's not like your standard cotton material. It feels like it has some rayon or something in it. It's kind of a little bit slick and thick, and feels great, and has like a little bit of a sheen and gloss on it. So just another shirt that I've been trying out, but got my logo on it. You're gonna get them from Teespring underneath the video here. Anyway, thanks for joining me today, guys. I don't want to just ramble on. Send me more info on the movies you love. We're going to do another list on this. And let me know if there's anything you want to discuss. I know some guys do the Ask Me Anything videos. If there are questions that you want to ask me in particular, happy to make some time to do those. But yeah. See you, Panda. See you, Yuna, Ben, Motley, Christian, Off-Roader, Mason, Peter Von Panda. Out.